action since we've had our bounce from 39.6k and give you the key levels that we want to be looking out for on our road to ascend to higher prices and new all-time highs. So could this be the bottom that we've recently seen this bounce from at 39.6? Quite possibly, but we don't know yet. But I am still definitely expecting some relief here. Okay, so we marked out this area for a long time. We said if we lose this level here at the 42.6 level, which was the liquidation low back in December, then we were expecting, we wanted to hold this recent low of 39.6 to basically continue the uptrend, okay, and maybe form some kind of base to start moving higher, right? And remember, you do never want to be selling into key levels of support on high time frame, especially when sentiment is really bad. So yeah, just bear that in mind. You know, anyone who's selling their Bitcoin at 40k or below 40k at these levels after this move, okay, I really think you really need to rethink your strategy. I'm not going to go on a rant about that. I spoke about that a little bit in the previous video on Bitcoin, but let's get into it. So we also discussed how we have this low volume, very low volume node here at that 40k level, and that basically price tends to either, we're going to slice through it, okay, because basically people don't want to do business here at that level, or we get a nice bounce from it, okay, and we get wicks to, we get you know, down wicks where we can start to propel our moves to the upside. So that's basically how I'm looking at Bitcoin, and we've seen exactly that at this level, right? So if we drill it down onto the shorter time frame, what else can we see? If we drill it down to the hourly, okay, we started to form some of these sort of bottoming patterns where we've got a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders, but we're flipping, okay, we're now just starting to flip some of these regions which were previously resistance, which we couldn't at all get over, right? Just starting to use them as support, breaking higher, and even on the short term trend lines, right, we are basically breaking out to the upside. So momentum is starting to shift on the shorter time frames, which should start to carry over onto the higher time frames, and we'll start to see that on the daily, the 12 and the weekly, okay? And interestingly enough, at this level over here was a very important level. So I really marked out the 39.6 level, okay? As soon as we broke this, I'm looking to be a buyer, right? And as well, what are we seeing? We're seeing people come in with high volume, the highest volume candle that we actually got since this liquidation wick over here. So that's pretty interesting that basically buyers are stepping in at this level and they're buying it up, okay? And remember, the incentive to go short and short sellers, even at this level, even if they were short from a higher level, okay, they have no incentive, or there's very little incentive at this level to either hold on to your short when you're basically at macro weekly support. So I would expect that shorts are at least covering at these levels, okay? So that's what, again, what we're looking to see and looking to get a bounce in this level. And just so you know, so I put my mouth or my money where my mouth is, right? I'll show you here, okay, some of the trades that I was taking, okay, shorter term trades, just to that first level of trend line where, like I said, we're looking to take areas of trades where we can basically have low risk, okay, and high reward. We spoke about that in the last Bitcoin video, okay? So you can see I've got my buy orders in at 39.8, not exactly the bottom, but pretty damn close to the bottom. Sold here just because we were coming up to some local trend resistance. And there was some, you know, news about like CPI numbers and whatnot. So I just wanted to cash in profits because that was a leverage long. So what next? The way that I'd be looking at this is we've broken this trend line over here, right? And essentially we are now looking to attack potentially this cluster of price action up the top. So hopefully I would expect us to be able to really retest this 46k level, this sort of this region over here, okay, where we basically saw the previous range low, okay. I would imagine that we can get there fairly quickly because this is sort of thin air. This is not, there's not really much going on here, right? Price doesn't tend to stay here very long. You can see here as well that once we bounce from these sort of levels, we basically don't stay at these sort of levels for very long, right? So I am expecting some sort of push up higher here is the most likely outcome. And if we again have a look at some of those lower time frame EMAs, and then we start to flip some resistance as support, you can see that if we use a 21 EMA on some of the higher time frame, some of the lower time frames, like I said, 4 hour as well, we're starting to get above that. 12, we're just testing it at the minute. So like I said, some of those low time frames I would imagine would start to carry over to some of the higher time frames once we start to push higher. Okay, and then we also spoke, okay, about the fib retracement, right? And that if this was to be a low, because this is a key level that we expect to see some kind of reaction or bounce from, okay, we expect to, at the very least, very least, right, is to get to the 236 over here, okay. And even from there to there, like we said, that is a super good, like, you know, you could probably risk 1%, even less, if you even somewhere down here, even over here, right? I think it's still okay to take the trade because you're still pretty low, and you've got that potential of, like, you know, a nice swing trade of like 15% if you wanted to carry on and swing up to this level in confluence with this trend line over here. So that's what I'm looking at. How can price play out from here? You know, is this the bottom like we mentioned a minute ago? I'm not sure if it is, but I definitely think, like I said, we see some relief. What I think we most likely see is some sort of push into this area over here, maybe some rejection, maybe some sort of push up out of this trend line would be pretty nice, okay? If we don't, maybe we come down after getting some sort of test down here, follow through into this region over here, and then break out would be two likely scenarios for the bull case. Okay, so either we correct down here and then move and reclaim this area, or we basically make that push lower. And if we do make that push lower, interestingly enough, like we spoke about before, if the correction was to play out something similar to the last one, to this last sort of accumulation phase, is that we got this and then we pushed up here, okay, move back down, we've created that lowest low, make a sort of push up to this region, which might be something similar to push to some of to that midpoint from the breakdown, and then maybe we make some sort of failed sell-off over here where it's sort of low volume, very grindy, again no one's looking out for it, and then we make that push higher. So I'm just giving you, like I said, some scenarios, and then the real levels to be looking out for, in my opinion, on the higher time frames and key levels of support resistance, is going to be the weekly EMA 21, which is going to be key, because what happened last time, we'll just get rid of that, just rid of the drawings. Last time we basically came down, tried to retest it, and as soon as we failed, we basically fell apart and broke down even further. So what we'd want to see is something like some sort of grind up here. Maybe the EMA comes down like this, and we want to at least get up to there and test it, hopefully flip that as a breakout, retest the support, and then move up higher. Something like that is basically what we want to see to be, you know, in continuation of this long-term trend. So that's basically what I would be looking at for Bitcoin. And essentially, I would imagine that some of these levels are also going to be in confluence with some of the higher time frame, low volume nodes and key weekly blocks, which we've spoken about over here. At the 52, 53 area is a really nice region to start reclaiming. I think if we reclaim some of these areas at 53, that would at least start to bring some other hope into the market. But also I would look at that as a real time where people start to flip bullish again if we start to get over here, and maybe if we do something like, you know, we grind up in some kind of fashion, but we reclaim this area and again use this as support and flip higher, I imagine that you know, this rally could quickly turn into a disbelief rally, because I don't think anyone at the minute truly believes that Bitcoin has any hope of actually making any new all-time highs this year. People are looking at this and going, this looks like a piece of shit asset, it is basically dead, 4-year cycle, etc, etc, etc. But we are not in this camp until we break this. Okay, so like we said, this was our last stand. We're at the last stand. We're seeing some nice reaction. So our bias still has to be, you know, a move to the upside. Another interesting last point that I wanted to draw yourself onto Bitcoin is people have been talking online about these head and shoulders patterns. Okay, and if you look at what happened here back in May, okay, if you look at the fractals, they're very similar. We had this head and shoulders, and people were saying if we break this, as soon as we break this, we're basically heading straight down to 20. Never happened. What we have here is actually fairly, you know, like a similar kind of pattern over here, okay, where we got this you know, this head and shoulders pattern, and we actually are using this as support. So like I said, head and shoulders pattern, I don't like playing them, especially on Bitcoin. They often tend to trap you, so definitely something to look out for. And if you actually have a look at the way that these fractals sort of played out, also looks very similar in that we've got this initial drive up here, push up here, drive up here, big push up here, and then we started to get these higher highs, but started to create some divergences, okay, and almost some distribution patterns, and then we basically had this big sell-off, okay. So again, something to look out for. So I do think that we've got some legs for the moment to essentially move higher, at least in the short term. So yeah, that's basically what I'm looking at. And again, we've spoken about fib targets and whatnot for Bitcoin, for our ultimate targets. And you know, if we have a look at some of these extensions that we've spoken about before, 1618 would be at the 130, you know, and some of these loftier targets up in the 200 range. But yeah, I tend to like to focus on 1.618 extensions and 4.236, because that's typically how mania phases sort of tend to finish. And if this was to be, you know, a bottom, again, where would that 4.236 around that 200k mark? Okay, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't discount these levels. 100k here, I imagine definitely you'll see some resistance, and yeah, but yeah. So don't be thinking that, you know, Bitcoin just can't go to new all-time highs. You need to be flexible, okay? Just like I'm flexible saying, right, you know, if we break these lows, I have to be neutral, okay? Because then, you know, what I'm seeing on the chart is telling me that we're at least neutral, if not, you know, bearish in that short term. That's how I'm looking at the market. And remember, a lot of these moves, right? Look at these moves, right? That happen so quickly. I'm not saying this has to happen, but you look at January 19, right? In 5 months, we moved up 300%, okay? Over here, in like 4 or 5 months, we moved up, you know, 400%. So, you know, if sometime over here, you know, we make some big move up here, you know, I'm just saying that these moves happen in a short time frame, and BTC doesn't often let you get, it doesn't give you time to get in. So it can be a really good strategy to basically buy on those big pullbacks, even though you're not necessarily going to be the bottom, and just, you know, try to catch that next big wave as and when we get it. And we're looking for that resolution, like we said, sometime towards the end of January. Maybe we get that resolution to this to this whole sort of corrective phase and whole corrective structure. So maybe in the next 2 weeks we do sort of make that push up and make that move down, and basically, you know, hover around in this period before we resolve ourselves, and potentially we do make that move to the downside, and maybe that will come at the end of Jan, you know, start of next month, or maybe from there we make a nice springboard and start to push higher. So that's how I'll be looking at Bitcoin. If you like the video, like I said, please drop me a like down below. It really helps me out. Drop me a comment with where you think it's heading, and if you want me to cover any other coins, then let me know. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next video.